How Israel's strike on Qatar could backfire. Israel's attack on Qatar has collapsed Gaza ceasefire talks, devalued U.S. security guarantees, and proved that safe havens are no longer assured. Israel has crossed a new threshold. For the first time, its air force struck inside Qatar, targeting Hamas's political leadership in the heart of Doha. The operation, carried out jointly by the IDF and the Internal Security Agency, Shin Bet, was aimed at senior negotiators Khalil al-Hayya and Khaled Mashal, who were reportedly reviewing the latest U.S. ceasefire proposal. Both men survived. However, the strike instead claimed the lives of at least 5 mid-ranking Hamas officials, and with them, possibly the last serious channel for ceasefire negotiations in Gaza. For years, Qatar has been at the center of mediation. It's where deals were struck, hostages released, and ceasefire plans drafted. It's also where the United States maintains Al Udeid, the largest airbase in the Middle East, home to thousands of American troops. This balancing act made Qatar indispensable. But now things have changed. Israel's attack has effectively killed the Gaza ceasefire talks, stripped U.S. security guarantees of value, and demonstrated that safe havens can no longer be taken for granted. The emirate in the crossfire of playing both sides has become collateral. Interestingly, the Hamas meeting itself was initiated by Trump, who urged the group to accept terms for ending the conflict. The timing has fueled allegations that the offer was never meant as a genuine step towards negotiation, but rather as a way to bait senior Hamas officials into one place and eliminate them on the spot. Hamas has since accused the United States of being an accomplice in the Doha attack. There has been little coverage of this angle, though. Of the 97 media outlets that reported on it, nearly half were right-leaning. Such imbalance is dangerous. It risks distorting public perception. To stay on top of things, I use Ground News. Its tools allow me to compare local and regional sources and form my own opinion. I can't stress enough how important this is, which is why I asked Ground News to sponsor this video. I mostly browse the blind spot feed, where they share interesting stories that other news outlets often miss due to biased reporting. Go to ground.news/Caspian or scan the QR code on the screen to learn more. Subscribing through this link gets you 40% off the Vantage plan. Also, by subscribing, you're directly supporting my channel. Thank you, Ground News. The link is below. Qatar now holds the unusual distinction of being bombed by both Iran and Israel within just a few months. For reference, on June 23, Iran targeted Al Udeid airbase in retaliation for a U.S. strike on its nuclear facilities. However, Tehran had telegraphed the attack in advance, giving Qatar and the United States time to prepare and minimize damage or casualties. This time, with the Israeli strike, the signals were far less clear. According to the White House, U.S. forces observed Israeli jets heading toward the Gulf, and Washington was only officially informed after the operation was already underway. The Trump administration claims it then relayed a warning to Doha, but Qatari officials insist no such message was received, or at least not in time. These conflicting accounts raise more questions than answers. The official story makes little sense. To reach Doha, the Israeli F-35S would have had to cross Jordanian airspace, then Saudi airspace before finally launching long-range over-the-horizon missiles from a safe distance. That's roughly 1,700 kilometers one way, or 3,400 kilometers for the whole round trip. Even with long-range missiles, the distance would have been too great for the jets to bridge on their own. Moreover, because this was a stealth mission, the F-35S would not have employed external fuel tanks, which would have limited their operational range to about 2,100 kilometers. This estimate doesn't even account for the extra fuel burned in aerial maneuvers, or the payload the aircraft would be carrying. All of this means that at some point on the return flight, the Israeli jets must have been refueled mid-air, most likely by tankers operated by U.S. Central Command. Coincidentally, at the very time of the Israeli strike, a British Voyager tanker took off from Qatar, circled in the skies for several hours, and then returned to base. This has led to speculation that Britain had refueled the Israeli jets. The problem, however, is technical. The Voyager tanker relies on a probe and drogue system in which a cone at the end of a hose connects to the receiving aircraft. The Israeli F-35A, by contrast, requires a flying boom system, which is a rigid arm extending from the tanker. The two systems are not compatible, making it highly unlikely that the British tanker was involved. Meanwhile, according to the Wall Street Journal, the Israeli jets avoided Arab airspace altogether by flying over the Red Sea on the opposite side of the Arabian Peninsula from Qatar. From there, they reportedly launched air-launched ballistic missiles that arced into low Earth orbit before striking Doha. However, even in this setting, the Israeli missiles would have been detected by America's space-based infrared sensors. And also, the distance would still have been too great for the jets to complete without support. Case in point, the Israeli operation, whether through Saudi airspace or the Red Sea, must have been picked up by the United States and even approved by it. Even stranger is the silence of Qatar's air defenses. Doha possesses some of the most advanced systems money can buy, including Patriot, THAAD, NISAMS, and Skynex batteries along with a fleet of F-15, Rafalos and Eurofighters. These assets should have detected incoming aircraft and missiles long before they reached the capital. Yet, none were activated. The absence of any response suggests that the Qatari leadership, like the Trump administration, may have been aware of the operation from the outset, and whether by pressure or circumstance had little choice but to let it proceed. There is, however, no way to verify any of this. We can only speculate based on the information currently available publicly. Qatar's Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned the Israeli strike as a violation of the country's sovereignty, a position that was echoed by several other Gulf Arab states. Even if the strike missed its intended targets, it delivered a clear message. When Israel perceives a threat to its security, it shows little regard for red lines or diplomatic fallout, and places once considered safe havens can no longer be taken for granted. The Israeli ambassador to the United States underscored the point bluntly. If we didn't get them this time, we'll get them next time. This suggests that Israel may be prepared to carry out assassinations in other countries across the region despite the risk of diplomatic backlash that could further isolate it internationally. At the behest of the United States and, implicitly, Israel, Qatar began hosting Hamas in 2010. The idea was to create a safe place where Israeli and Hamas officials could hold talks during times of conflict. Doha has continued to play this role during the Gaza war with leaders such as Khalid Mashal and Khalil al-Hayya, often based in the city. In recent years, however, Qatar's mediation has had diminishing returns. Both the United States and Israel have grown more frustrated with the negotiations, and as a consequence, more critical of Qatar's role and its ties to Hamas. As early as October 2023, Qatari diplomats were already in talks with their American counterparts about whether to scale back their ties with Hamas after the hostage negotiations. The discussion showed that Doha was feeling the pressure and beginning to view its relationship with Hamas as a liability as much as an asset. Doha did achieve some diplomatic success though, most notably in November 2023, when a temporary ceasefire allowed more than 100 Israeli hostages to be released. Another truce followed in January 2025, but it collapsed in 2 months. Since then, negotiations have ground to a halt. Israeli leaders, including Netanyahu, have become increasingly outspoken, accusing Doha of failing to put sufficient pressure on Hamas to free the remaining hostages. By November 2024, Qatar's role as mediator had reached a breaking point. Doha suspended its efforts, arguing that neither Hamas nor Israel was negotiating in good faith. However, under pressure from the incoming Trump administration, Qatar resumed its role the following month, a case of damned if you do and damned if you don't. Now the Israeli attack has made the chances of a ceasefire even smaller. Hamas is likely to harden its position while Doha faces growing pressure to expel the group's leadership in order to limit U.S. criticism and avoid further Israeli strikes. With negotiations already stalled, Hamas has little incentive to engage on Israel's terms, and mediation is likely to shift to Egypt and the United States, though neither has the leverage needed to pressure Hamas into a deal. Meanwhile, for Qatar, the risks are growing. Hosting Hamas's political bureau without serving as a mediator makes the country a more vulnerable target, even if Israeli strikes remain limited compared to its campaigns in Lebanon and Syria. All this makes it increasingly likely that Doha will expel the Hamas leadership, which means the Gaza conflict will continue for the foreseeable future, as Israel expands its military operations in the Strip. As for the United States, its vast military presence in Qatar has not translated into reliable protection. U.S. security guarantees have thus been rendered meaningless. Twice in the past year, first during Iran's missile strike and now during Israel's airstrike, Washington has been either unable or unwilling to defend Qatar's airspace. And so as Doha steps back from its role as mediator, it could consider reaching out to new security partners such as Turkey while at the same time seeking closer accommodation with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. In 2017, during the Saudi and Emirate blockade on Qatar, DHA turned to Turkish rather than American troops to help forestall a possible invasion by its neighbors. Turkey has hundreds of troops in Qatar, and in the near future it might play a larger role in the country's air defense. Doha has little political weight to throw around. In matters of statecraft, it is so poor that all it has is money. If you approve of what we do, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and mayhap share the video. In any case, thank you for your time and soul.